AP News in brief at 6:04 p.m. EDT. Palestinians struggle to evacuate northern Gaza amid growing Israeli warnings of ground offensive. DEIR al-BALAH. Gaza Strip, AP. Palestinians struggled Saturday to flee from areas of Gaza targeted by the Israeli military while grappling with a growing water and medical supply shortage ahead of an expected land offensive a week after Hamas' bloody, wide-ranging attack into Israel. Israel renewed calls on social media and in leaflets dropped from the air for Gaza residents to move south, while Hamas urged people to stay in their homes. The UN and aid groups have said such a rapid exodus along with Israel's siege of the territory would cause untold human suffering. The evacuation directive covers an area of 1.1 million residents, or about half the territory's population. The Israeli military said hundreds of thousands of Palestinians had heeded the warning and headed south. It gave Palestinians a 6-hour window that ended Saturday afternoon to travel safely within Gaza along two main routes. A week after Hamas' attack, Israel was still working to assess the full extent of the casualties. With special rabbinic approval, workers at a military base in central Israel continued the grueling task of identifying the bodies of the Israelis and foreign nationals who were killed, mostly civilians. Work is normally halted on Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited Be'eri and Kfar Aza, two southern border communities where Hamas militants killed dozens of Israelis in their initial attack, to meet with soldiers and tour the ruins of homes where the killings happened. Netanyahu has faced criticism that his government has not done enough to meet with relatives of the victims. Weary families trudged through Gaza streets, trying to flee the north before Israel's invasion. DEIR al-BALAH. Gaza Strip, AP. Some fled home with suitcases jammed with clothes and heirlooms and photographs. Some left with stacks of foam mattresses tied to car roofs. They took buses and vans and cars and carts pulled by donkeys. Many walked. Many had nothing with them but exhausted family members trudging through streets littered with rubble. All of them were trying to get to safety. "We left the house without food, without water and without clothes," said Muhammad Hillis, sitting at a wooden school desk scarred by generations of students in a makeshift refugee camp in central Gaza. "We left without taking anything with us," he said. About 150 people lived in his building in their northern Gaza town. All left after clouds of Israeli leaflets began dropping from the sky, warning civilians to flee the north within 24 hours. "Evacuate south for your own safety and the safety of your families and distance yourself from Hamas terrorists who are using you as human shields," an Israeli statement said. It warned that Israeli forces would operate significantly in northern Gaza in the coming days, an apparent reference to an expected land offensive being prepared 1 week after Hamas' bloody, carefully planned attack on Israel. Far from Israel, Jews grieve and pray for peace in Shabbat services held as Israel-Hamas war rages. Time equals 400 ms. Greater than Jews in communities far from Israel gathered at synagogues this weekend for Shabbat services held amid the ongoing war ignited by Hamas militants' attack on Israel a week earlier. Rabbis led prayers of peace and shared grief with their congregations. At many synagogues security was tight. The deadly Hamas attack is not just another geopolitical event for Jewish people, explained one U.S. rabbi. It is dredging up generations of visceral trauma, especially in Pittsburgh, the city scarred by the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. "More Jews were killed last Shabbat than on any other day since the Holocaust," said Rabbi Daniel Fellman during a service at Temple Sinai. "It isn't that Hamas wants the destruction of Israel. It's that Hamas wants the destruction of you and me. The world deserves better, the Palestinian people deserve better, and we need to do better." Despite that anguish, Fellman's congregation, and others across the world, heeded the words of an Israeli soldier who had urged worshippers to go sing and dance. "Go make sure that every person in the world hears us singing this prayer this Shabbat." Hunter Biden investigations lead to ethical concerns about President Biden, an AP NORC poll shows. Time equals 400 ms. Greater than Washington. AP. Ethical concerns are casting a shadow over President Joe Biden as he seeks re-election amid investigations into his son Hunter and an impeachment inquiry, with a poll showing that 35% of U.S. adults believe the president himself has done something illegal. An additional 33% say they think the Democratic president behaved unethically, but not illegally, and 30% say Joe Biden did nothing wrong, according to the poll. The results of the survey by the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research reflect both a vast political divide and skepticism about the morality of government leaders, House Republicans have launched an impeachment inquiry into Biden, seeking to tie the president to the foreign business dealings of his 53-year-old son. Hunter Biden is facing a separate criminal indictment by a special counsel after a plea deal in a tax and gun case fell apart. Republicans have been investigating Hunter Biden for years, since his father was vice president. While questions have arisen about the ethics surrounding the Biden family's international business, no evidence has emerged so far to prove that Joe Biden, in his current or previous office, abused his role or accepted bribes. The survey's findings point toward a U.S. political system riven with cynicism and suspicion. Having fractured along partisan lines, the public largely appears to judge Joe Biden as much based on his party affiliation as the known facts. A proposed gag order on Trump in his federal election case is putting the judge in a tricky position. Washington, AP. A proposed gag order aimed at reining in Donald Trump's incendiary rhetoric puts the judge overseeing his federal election interference case in a tricky position. She must balance the need to protect the integrity of the legal proceedings against the First Amendment rights of a presidential candidate to defend himself in public. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan will hear arguments Monday in Washington over whether Trump has gone too far with remarks such as calling prosecutors a team of thugs, and one possible witness a gutless pig. It is the biggest test yet for Chutkan, underscoring the unprecedented complexities of prosecuting the former Republican president as the judge vows not to let political considerations guide her decisions. Ending the stream of Trump's harsh language would make the case easier to manage. But among the difficult questions Chutkan must navigate is how any gag order might be enforced and how one could be fashioned that does not risk provoking Trump's base and fueling his claims of political persecution as he campaigns to retake the White House in 2024. She has to think about the serious risk that it's not just his words that could trigger violence, but that she could play into the conspiracy theories that Trump's followers tend to believe in, and that her act of issuing a gag order might trigger a very disturbing response, said Catherine Ross. Said, a George Washington University Law School professor. At least 27 dead with dozens more missing after boat capsizes in northwest Congo Kinshasa, Congo, AP. A boat capsized in Congo's northwest killing at least 27 people, and more than 70 others were missing, a senior government official said Saturday as rescuers searched frantically for survivors. The locally made boat capsized late Friday in the city of Mbandaka in Equator Province as it transported more than 100 passengers along the Congo River to the town of Boloma, according to Taylor Nanzi, deputy provincial governor. Time equals 400 ms, greater than, already 27 bodies of victims have been removed from the waters, and transported to the morgue of the General Hospital in Mbandaka, said Nanzi, adding that an investigation to find out the cause of the accident had begun. The New Civil Society of Congo, a local civil society group, said 49 people died in the accident, which it said occurred after an engine failure. Everything started to sink, Jean-Pierre Wangela, president of the group, told reporters. The contradictory death tolls, which is common in such incidents in Congo, could not immediately be reconciled. Ring of Fire, eclipse moves across the Americas, bringing with it cheers and shouts of joy. Albuquerque, NM. AP. First came the darkening skies, then the crescent-shaped shadows on the ground, and finally an eruption of cheers by crowds that gathered Saturday along the narrow path of a rare ring of fire, eclipse of the sun. Time equals 400 ms, greater than. It was a spectacular show for millions of people across the Americas as the moon moved into place and the ring formed. There were hoots, hollers and yelps for those with an unfettered view in Albuquerque, where the celestial event coincided with an international balloon fiesta that typically draws tens of thousands of spectators and hundreds of hot air balloon pilots from around the world. They got a double treat, with balloons lifting off during a mass ascension shortly after dawn and then the eclipse just hours later. Some pilots used their propane burners to shoot flames upward in unison as the spectacle unfolded. Time equals 400 ms, greater than. It's very exciting to be here and have the convergence of our love of flying with something very natural like an eclipse, said Alan Hahn of Aurora, Colorado, whose balloon named Heaven Bound 2 was one of 72 selected for a special, glow, performance as skies darkened. Louvre Museum and Versailles Palace evacuated after bomb threats with France on alert. Paris. AP. The Louvre Museum in Paris and Versailles Palace evacuated visitors and staff Saturday after receiving bomb threats, police said. The French government started deploying 7,000 troops to increase security around the country after a fatal school stabbing by a suspected Islamic extremist. Time equals 400 ms, greater than the evacuations of two of the world's most visited tourist sites come amid heightened vigilance around France following Friday's school attack, and global tensions linked to the war between Israel and Hamas. President Emmanuel Macron's government is worried about fallout from the war in France. Time equals 400 ms, greater than alarms rang out through the Louvre when the evacuation was announced, and in the underground shopping center beneath its signature pyramid. Paris police said officers searched the museum after it received written bomb threats. The Louvre Communication Service said no one was hurt and no bomb was found, so the museum will reopen as usual on Sunday. Time equals 400 ms, greater than the Louvre, home to masterpieces such as the Mona Lisa, welcomes between 30,000 and 40,000 visitors per day and several million annually. The former royal palace at Versailles also received bomb threats, and the palace and its sprawling gardens were being evacuated while police examined the area. According to national police, a major Paris train station, Gare de Lyon, was being evacuated after the discovery of a possible bottle explosive, police said. Sen. Joe Manchin considers independent 2024 run, warns party system could be nation's downfall, Charleston, West Virginia. AP, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia has benefited from waiting to reveal where he stands as the swing vote in a chamber closely divided between Democrats and Republicans. He's taken the same approach when it comes to the next phase of his political career. The moderate Democrat has teased possible retirement, a run for re-election to the Senate, or even a presidential campaign in 2024, possibly as an independent candidate. During a multi-day trip to West Virginia's capital this week, the 76-year-old expressed growing frustration with the polarized U.S. two-party system. "I'm having a hard time, I really am," he said while touring a Charleston metal stamping plant. "The two-party system, unless it changes, will be the downfall of our country." Manchin's visit included the metal plant, which began being revitalized during his governorship, and an Amtrak station renovated with infrastructure funds he helped secure. He told reporters he was getting closer to a 2024 decision, repeating his line that he'll make an announcement before the end of the year. But he deflected questions about his identity as a Democrat, which he's held since first running for West Virginia's House of Delegates in 1982. Amid a mental health crisis, toy industry takes on a new role, building resilience. Time equals 400 ms, greater than New York. AP. As more children emerge from the pandemic grappling with mental health issues, their parents are seeking ways for them to build emotional resilience. And toy companies are paying close attention. While still in its early phase, a growing number of toy marketers are embracing MESH, or mental, emotional and social health, as a designation for toys that teach kids skills like how to adjust to new challenges, resolve conflict, advocate for themselves, or solve problems. The acronym was first used in child development circles and by the American Camp Association 10 years ago and gained new resonance after the pandemic. Rachel Harmuth, head of Think Fun, a division of toy company Ravensburger, and resilience expert and family physician Deborah Gilboa, formed a MESH task force earlier this year with the goal of getting manufacturers to design toys with emotional resilience in mind and to have retailers market them accordingly. Time equals 400 ms, greater than. We just need to educate parents and educators just a little bit to know that we could be using their playtime a little bit intentionally, Gilboa said. Click here to read more from the Gazette.